Marriage, in its modern form, is not the fairy tale picture that society paints for men when they are young. It is not about two souls uniting forever in unconditional love, loyalty, and respect. Instead, it has become a structured contract, an institution backed by the state, where emotions are secondary and legal obligations are primary. Men enter marriage thinking it is a sacred bond, but they don't realize they are signing a business deal with terms that overwhelmingly favor the woman. The man is expected to provide, protect, and commit his entire life to the arrangement, while the woman enters with the security of knowing that even if she walks away, the system guarantees her financial and legal leverage. This is the first bitter truth. Marriage has been reframed from a partnership to a transaction. It's not about love, it's about law. And in this transaction, the man is always the asset while the woman is the beneficiary. When you strip marriage of all its romantic illusions, you see it for what it really is, a contract enforced by the government where the man assumes all the risk. The woman, protected by divorce laws, alimony, and child custody frameworks, carries little to no downside. If things go wrong, she has a safety net. But for the man, the safety net is ripped away the second she decides to leave. He is left paying child support for kids he might rarely see, or alimony to fund the lifestyle of a woman who no longer wants him. Marriage is the only contract where one party can break it at will, without penalty, and still be rewarded for leaving. Imagine signing a business deal with someone where they can walk away at any time, take half your assets, demand payments for years, and still keep custody of your legacy. Would you ever sign that? Yet millions of men do it, believing the lie that it's about love. The deeper tragedy is that men aren't just losing money when marriages fail. They lose their freedom, their time, their peace of mind, and in many cases, their very identity. A divorce isn't simply the end of a relationship, it's the dismantling of a man's life. Courts don't care about his sacrifices, his years of dedication, or the fact that he built everything with the intention of supporting a family. They don't care about how much he invested, emotionally, financially, or spiritually. The system looks at him as a resource to be divided. He becomes a paycheck, a bank account, an asset to extract from. And because the laws lean so heavily towards protecting women, he is almost always stripped of the very things he worked hardest for. That is why so many men emerge from divorce, bitter, broken, and defeated. Because the marriage wasn't just a personal loss, it was a business deal rigged against them from the start. Men also underestimate how marriage alters the dynamics of attraction. Before marriage, a man often feels that his partner is with him because she desires him. But after marriage, especially after legal binding and children, the dynamic shifts. The incentive to maintain the same level of passion, excitement, or even respect diminishes. For the woman, the contract guarantees her stability regardless of effort. For the man, however, the pressure to keep producing, protecting, and proving himself only intensifies. He cannot stop working, he cannot afford to relax, because the entire weight of the family rests on him. If he falters, he risks losing everything. In a business sense, he is the sole investor, but the dividends are shared and often taken away from him later. Love may have been the entry point, but security becomes the motive, and in that trade, desire quietly dies. The harsh reality is that men often enter marriage under the illusion of permanence, while women enter with options. For a man, marriage is forever. For a woman, marriage is for as long as I feel like it, and the laws back her feelings. If she wakes up one day and decides she's no longer happy, she can leave without consequence, and the state will enforce her decision with legal muscle. Men learn too late that happiness was never the binding force of the contract. Obligation was, but the obligation is one-sided. He is bound financially, emotionally, and socially, while she is free to exit when she pleases. This is not a partnership of equals. It's a lopsided deal where one party has leverage and the other carries risk. Men discover this only after years of sacrifice, when suddenly the woman they married is now their opponent in court, armed with lawyers, backed by judges, and supported by a system that views him not as a man, but as a provider to be drained. One of the most painful aspects men discover about marriage is that the rules of attraction change the second the vows are spoken. Before marriage, effort is mutual. Both people are invested in winning each other over, proving their value, keeping desire alive. But once marriage enters the picture, the woman often relaxes, knowing she has locked in legal security. She doesn't have to work as hard to maintain her beauty, her charm, or even her femininity, because the law guarantees her position regardless of effort. Meanwhile, the man's responsibilities don't just stay the same, they multiply. Now, he's not just a boyfriend, he's a husband, a provider, a homeowner, a father. His identity becomes entangled in a never-ending checklist of duties. She knows that society holds him accountable for those roles, while she can freely shift her focus onto herself. It is in this lopsided environment that resentment grows. She feels entitled, he feels trapped, and what began as a romantic union slowly morphs into a contractual obligation, where his masculine energy is drained, not celebrated. The financial side of marriage is where men often lose the most. Think about it, during the relationship, the man is already expected to shoulder most expenses: dinners, trips, gifts, dates. In marriage, that expectation doesn't just stop, it intensifies. Now, he's responsible for the mortgage, bills, children's education, vacations, emergencies, and the long-term stability of the household. The problem? All of this is structured under the assumption that his role is to provide, yet if the marriage collapses, all those years of hard work mean nothing. He is still required to continue financing her lifestyle through alimony or child support, regardless of whether she contributed equally. It's as if the court looks at him and says, "We don't care what happened, you're the man. Pay up." The bitter irony is that he was told marriage was about partnership, yet when it ends, the burden is his alone. He risks losing not just money, but property, investments, and even future income. Imagine building wealth for 20 years, only to watch half of it legally stolen in a divorce settlement. That's not love, that's legalized robbery. What makes this worse is that society conditions men to believe this is normal, even noble. From childhood, boys are told that being a good husband means sacrifice, that a man's worth is measured in how much he provides, protects, and endures. Women are painted as victims, deserving of protection no matter the context, while men are portrayed as strong enough to absorb endless losses. When a man is divorced, society rarely asks why she left. It assumes he failed. He wasn't attentive enough, romantic enough, successful enough. The blame lands squarely on his shoulders. But when a woman leaves, she's celebrated as brave, independent, or finding her truth. This cultural narrative adds insult to injury. Not only does the system strip men of their assets, but society strips them of dignity by telling them the loss was their fault. It's the equivalent of being robbed and then shamed for leaving the door unlocked. The double standard is glaring, but because men have been conditioned to be stoic, they suffer in silence while society claps for her freedom. Another overlooked reality is how marriage becomes a tool of leverage in emotional battles. Once married, a woman knows the system favors her, and this knowledge often seeps into the relationship in subtle, corrosive ways. Disagreements are no longer just about resolving conflict. They are silent power struggles where she knows she has an escape button backed by law. The simple phrase, "I'll leave," carries immense weight when uttered by a wife, because a man knows exactly what leaving entails. It's not just her walking out of the house. It's the courts taking half of everything he owns. It's losing custody of his children. It's years of mandatory payments, and it's his reputation being dragged through the mud. She may never even intend to act on it, but the knowledge that she could is enough to give her the upper hand in most arguments. This is how marriages silently suffocate men, not just through love lost, but through the constant awareness that one wrong move could cost him his entire life's work. The saddest part is that men enter marriage with genuine intentions. He thinks he's building a life, a home, and a future. His sacrifices are made in good faith, with the belief that love and loyalty will protect him. But what he doesn't realize is that marriage, as designed today, has stripped love of its natural safeguards and replaced them with legal obligations. Once upon a time, marriage was about survival, legacy, and community. It made sense in a world where both husband and wife needed each other to survive. But in the modern world, where women can earn, live, and thrive independently, marriage is less about survival and more about security. And security, when backed by law, creates entitlement. The woman doesn't need to nurture the bonds to protect her stability. The state does it for her, and so the man becomes disposable. When she's done with him, she doesn't just leave emotionally, she cashes him out financially. This is why men are beginning to wake up, to question the deal, to see marriage not as romance but as risk. The modern man is pressured into marriage not just by his partner, but by an entire social machine that glorifies the ceremony and shames those who avoid it. Families constantly ask, "When are you settling down?" As if a man's life is incomplete without legal paperwork tying him to another person. Media bombards him with movies and stories portraying marriage as the ultimate achievement, the sign that he has made it as a man. Even religious institutions reinforce the narrative by equating marriage with morality, subtly suggesting that men who stay single are selfish, immature, or incomplete. Yet, when you look at the reality of divorce courts, custody battles, alimony traps, and the countless men left emotionally and financially bankrupt, you realize this societal push is not about protecting men, it's about keeping them in line, compliant, and easily controlled. The man who doesn't marry is harder to manipulate because he has no legal bind. That's why society works so hard to sell the illusion that marriage is the pinnacle of a man's life, even though statistics scream the opposite. What most men don't realize until it's too late is that once they sign that marriage contract, they're entering into a system where their rights are diminished the moment conflict arises. A wife can cheat, lie, manipulate, and neglect her responsibilities. But if she decides to pull the plug on the marriage, she still walks away with the lion's share of benefits. Courts rarely punish female infidelity in divorce proceedings. Instead, they focus on fair distribution, which is often anything but fair. Imagine working your entire adult life, saving diligently, buying property, and building assets, only to watch them split in half or more because someone fell out of love. Love isn't measurable in court, but money is. And that's why men always lose. They end up paying for her new life, her new adventures, sometimes even her new man, while being painted as the villain in the narrative. This isn't partnership, this is legalized servitude, dressed in the language of romance. Even when children are involved, the deck is stacked against men. A father can be loving, dedicated, and fully capable of raising his kids, but courts almost always default custody to the mother. This leaves countless fathers paying enormous child support while being reduced to weekend visitors in their children's lives. The psychological damage is immeasurable. Men aren't just stripped of their finances, they're stripped of their role as fathers, often forced to beg for scraps of time with their own blood. Meanwhile, the mother, empowered by the system, knows she can withhold access, manipulate visitation schedules, and use the children as pawns to control him. For many men, this is more painful than losing money. It's losing the bond with their children, watching them grow up from a distance, all while financing a lifestyle they no longer share. This cruel arrangement highlights the cold truth. Marriage doesn't just risk a man's wallet, it risks his legacy, his bloodline, and his place in his children's hearts. And here's the irony. Many men realize all of this only after they've already walked into the trap. Why? Because during the honeymoon phase, a woman presents her most attractive, cooperative, and supportive self. She showers him with affection, admiration, and loyalty. She sells him the dream of a forever partnership, making him believe she's different from all the horror stories he's heard. But once the contract is signed and the ring is on her finger, that urgency fades. The incentive for her to keep proving herself diminishes because she now holds the ultimate security blanket, the law. She no longer fears being replaced because the system ensures she gets compensated whether she stays or leaves. That's why so many men say marriage changes women. It's not that she becomes a different person, it's that the mask comes off. The incentives that drove her to nurture the relationship are gone, and what remains is entitlement. She knows she can cash him out at any time, so why should she keep chasing him the way she did before? The brutal aftermath of divorce is what truly wakes men up. The statistics are horrifying. Nearly half of marriages end in divorce, and in the vast majority of cases, men lose financially, emotionally, and socially. Stories flood online of men losing their homes, their retirement savings, even being forced to move back in with family while their ex-wives live comfortably on settlements. And yet, society still points the finger at men, as if they should have chosen better or been better husbands. This creates a cycle of shame where men are robbed and humiliated simultaneously. And what happens to the women? They're often celebrated for starting over, for finding themselves, for being strong enough to leave. The world gives them sympathy and support, while men are left broken and alone. This double standard is why men are beginning to say no altogether, rejecting marriage not because they hate women, but because they recognize the rules of the game are rigged against them. Marriage, once a sacred bond, has become a gamble where the house, the courts, the laws, the system always wins. The harsh reality is that men are finally beginning to wake up, but the awakening comes with scars. For decades, society painted the picture of marriage as the ultimate expression of love, stability, and maturity. Men were taught that the path to being a real man was to marry, buy a house, have kids, and provide endlessly. Yet, more and more men are looking at those who walked that path and noticing a pattern of bitterness, brokenness, and regret. They see fathers who lost everything, uncles who never recovered financially, co-workers paying half their income to women who abandoned them, and friends who only see their kids once a month. The illusion is crumbling, and here's the truth that terrifies society. Men are choosing to walk away. They're realizing that you don't need marriage to love. You don't need a legal document to build a family, and you certainly don't need to gamble everything you've worked for on a system designed to strip you of it at the first sign of trouble. The new generation of men is quietly stepping off the conveyor belt, refusing to enter a deal that only guarantees their eventual loss. This choice to walk away is not about bitterness or hatred toward women, it's about survival and clarity. A man who has seen the battlefield of divorce court knows that no matter how strong, loyal, or loving he is, he cannot out-muscle the law. He cannot negotiate with a system that was never built to protect him. Walking away, then, becomes an act of masculine wisdom. It's the realization that power is not found in chasing outdated expectations, but in creating your own path. Men are starting to redefine masculinity by rejecting the pressure to prove themselves through marriage. They are embracing freedom, building wealth, pursuing passions, and surrounding themselves with people who don't demand legal contracts as proof of loyalty. In many ways, they're rediscovering a primal truth. A man's greatest strength is his independence, his ability to stand alone without fear. Marriage takes that independence and trades it for dependency on a system that despises him. Refusing the deal is not cowardice, it's courage. And here's the paradox that no one talks about. When men stop chasing marriage, when they stop bending over backwards to prove themselves worthy of being husbands, they actually become far more attractive. Women claim to want commitment, but what draws them in is power, self-sufficiency, and unshakable confidence. The man who doesn't need marriage, who doesn't beg for validation, radiates a calm strength that women can't resist. He holds all the cards, because he cannot be manipulated by the fear of losing her. If she threatens to walk, he lets her. If she demands a ring as proof of love, he refuses and watches her reveal her true motives. This unbothered stance shifts the dynamic entirely. Women know that the man who cannot be pressured is the man who stands above the rest. Ironically, by rejecting the traditional path of marriage, men not only save themselves from disaster, but also gain the respect and admiration that marriage was supposed to give them. The difference is, this respect is real, not legal, not forced, not bound by contracts. The more you study marriage as it exists today, the more it resembles a business contract with extremely unfavorable terms for men. Consider this: in no other deal in life would a person agree to hand over half their assets simply because the other party became unhappy. If you entered into a business partnership and your partner decided they didn't like the way things were going, they wouldn't be able to walk away with your house, your savings, and future income streams. And yet, this is precisely what men sign up for when they say, "I do." The language of love disguises the brutal reality of a contract that binds men into an arrangement where they assume maximum risk and minimum protection. If this were pitched honestly, sign here, and if she leaves, she gets half of everything you own, your kids, and a paycheck from you every month for years, no rational man would sign. The tragedy is that society disguises this contract with flowers, music, and the word forever, so men don't realize they're walking into a business deal designed to bankrupt them. So where does this leave men? at a crossroads. They can either continue believing in the fantasy, ignoring the countless men who came before them, or they can embrace the hard truth and take control of their lives. The path forward for men is not bitterness, not hatred, but wisdom. Build yourself first. Protect your finances. Refuse to sign contracts that strip you of power. If you want love, let it exist outside of legal systems that profit from your downfall. If you want children, structure your life so that you are in control, not a court system that can remove them from you at any moment. The men who thrive in the future will be the ones who refuse to play by rigged rules. They will be the ones who realize that true masculinity is not found in sacrifice to a broken system, but in living freely on their own terms. Marriage, as it exists today, is a gamble where men always lose, but walking away, choosing yourself, and building a life of independence is the one bet men can actually win. What men must understand is that society has conditioned them to equate sacrifice with honor. From childhood, they are bombarded with stories of knights giving their lives for a princess, husbands working themselves to the bone for their families, and fathers laying down everything for the next generation. While there is nobility in providing and protecting, the modern marriage contract exploits this instinct without rewarding it. A man gives, and gives his money, his time, his energy, his dreams, yet he is not guaranteed loyalty, respect, or gratitude in return. In fact, many men discover that the more they give, the more they are taken for granted, and when they finally run out of resources or the woman decides she is no longer happy, they are cast aside with brutal efficiency. The system weaponizes a man's instinct to protect and provide, turning it into a tool for his own destruction. That's why so many men now see marriage not as a noble act, but as a rigged sacrifice that robs them of everything while rewarding them with nothing but a lifetime of servitude. If you strip away the emotional illusions, marriage is nothing more than a redistribution of resources from men to women. Historically, it made sense. Men worked, women stayed home, and the structure allowed survival. But in the modern world, where women are financially independent, socially empowered, and legally protected, the exchange no longer makes sense. A man still pays the highest price, but the woman no longer needs him for survival, only for lifestyle. She can enjoy the benefits of his income, his commitment, and his stability, but at any moment, she can cash out and still secure her financial safety through divorce courts and alimony. Men, on the other hand, lose everything they've built and often spend decades recovering. This imbalance is why so many men call marriage the worst contract a man can sign. It's not that men don't want love, they do. But when the legal framework punishes loyalty and rewards betrayal, the risk-to-reward ratio becomes insane. In every other area of life, men would refuse such a deal, yet in marriage, they're shamed into signing it, only to regret it later. The tragedy runs deeper when you look at children. Courts overwhelmingly side with mothers in custody battles, even when the father is a stable, reliable parent. A man can lose daily contact with his own children, the very people he works so hard to provide for, simply because the legal system assumes the mother is the default parent. Meanwhile, he still has to pay child support, sometimes in amounts so high they crush him financially, leaving him with barely enough to live on. Imagine the emotional devastation. You pour your heart into building a family, you sacrifice years of your life, and then the system rips your kids from your arms while demanding that you fund the very lifestyle that excludes you. For many men, this betrayal is worse than losing money. It's losing their purpose, their identity, and the bond with the people they love most. And this is where the system reveals its darkest cruelty. It weaponizes love itself against men, ensuring that the very thing that gave them meaning becomes the very tool of their destruction. What society refuses to admit is that the decline of marriage is not because men are afraid of commitment, but because men have finally studied the rules of the game. They've seen their fathers and uncles drained of wealth, their co-workers destroyed by divorce, their friends alienated from their children, and they've decided not to step into the same trap. Men are logical by nature. When they see the risk outweighs the reward, they walk away. Yet, instead of acknowledging the unfairness of the deal, society shames them, calling them immature, selfish, or afraid. But the truth is, Refusing to engage in a broken system is not fear, it's intelligence. Men are no longer willing to play the role of provider in a game where the rules ensure they lose no matter how well they play. They would rather build lives on their own terms, with freedom and autonomy, than surrender everything to a contract that benefits only one side. And that's why, year by year, fewer men are marrying. It's not bitterness, it's clarity. Here's the ultimate truth, brother. Marriage today is not about love, it's about leverage. Women enter it knowing that the system backs them at every step, while men enter it blind, thinking love alone will protect them. But love cannot stand against laws, contracts, and courts designed to bleed men dry. That's why the only way to win in modern marriage is not to play at all. Men who choose freedom, who invest in themselves, who build their lives without tying them to a contract, end up with the power that married men lost. They live on their own terms, answer to no one, and protect their resources from exploitation. And ironically, those are the men women chase the hardest, the ones they cannot trap, the ones who refuse to be bound. Because deep down, even women respect the man who will not surrender his freedom for approval. Marriage is a business deal where men always lose, but the man who knows this truth is already free. And freedom, brother, is the greatest power a man can have.